Hi Leo, welcome to your April 2020 Life Path reading. It's Raina here. This isn't a regular feature of mine, but I wanted to revisit it because I have been meaning to do this for a while. I like doing this type of focus because it's more philosophical and less about like a concrete matter of your career or your love life or something like that. But at the same time, it can sometimes talk about those areas, but more from the philosophical or the spiritual standpoint of like, where am I going at this time in my life? Am I at a crossroads? Do I feel like change is about to happen for me? Or is this a time when I'm kind of building upon my other actions or foundations, or that I've taken, whatever, anything. So it's a very short spread. I'll explain what each card means. And there's certain cards where I do pick an additional card, and this is one of them. Okay, I'm going to have to do another one. I'll tell you why. Okay, that makes sense, because it doesn't make sense to me. When I'm talking, it's not just simply positive or negative, but just in terms of like in the position it's in as an outcome card. But I'll explain that when I get there. So where you are right now, Four of Wands. Leo is fire, so Wands is very appropriate for that. But this is about a happy home life. I'm sure there might be a few people out there that say, oh yeah, right, or that you don't even consider your life apart from work as your home life. You're so consumed with your career or what have you. But it can also be the physical structure, a new home, or wanting that. If it's happening right now, then it's something that you already have, but that you're looking for more. I mean, even when we have our dreams come true, then we all of a sudden have other things that we want to do. We don't just stop there. Excuse me. So that's why I have this position, which says where you want to be. Now, obviously, I mean, this is a card of anxiety. Obviously, you don't want to be there. But it's like looking at that anxiety. So when I put these two cards together, I think of someone who maybe, let's say this is the Four of Wands sometimes can be a marriage card of somebody who is in a marriage, and maybe that other person's a really great person, but you're not in love with them and you don't feel it's the right situation. And I always bring up the example of Elizabeth Gilbert in Eat, Love, Pray, because it wasn't like she was with somebody that was a terrible person who was abusive or anything like that. And that's what made it so wrenching for her, because she just would, cry herself to sleep every night, go to the bathroom and just cry because she was so miserable. And it had gotten to the point in her, I guess it was a marriage, I think. I'm pretty sure, yeah, where her husband wanted to start having children, and that's when she knew she had to get out of that, because she knew she couldn't just keep on with this facade, and yet she didn't want to hurt this person, because on paper she said everything was perfect in her life, and she didn't know how she could possibly not be happy. So if you have that kind of scenario going on, where you have this like beautiful house, or you have this wonderful family, and you feel like somehow unfulfilled, or that you're not in the right place, the Nine of Swords is like this underlying anxiety that you want to get rid of, but you want to understand it. People are just like, okay, let me get rid of it. What can I take to get rid of this anxiety? What you can take is some time for yourself, and sit with yourself, and really stop trying to run away, and really kind of like question your thoughts, Swords are thoughts. Trace them to their origin or origins and see like what is triggering that intensity of emotion. What is it? Even sometimes when people are unhappy in their life, they sometimes blame other people and say, if I was with a different person, I'd be like really happy. And maybe it's not that other person. Maybe it's within yourself. Not to say that it might not be the case of having the wrong person in your life. It might be that, but it's not going to be everything. And it's deeper than that. Although I will say, too, that even on a more mundane level, maybe you have a McMansion or something, and you thought that was going to be the key to being happier, but it's like it just created a whole new set of issues, and you just don't want to be possessed by your possessions anymore. It could be like a million things. Leo likes to live large, but you are next to Virgo. Maybe you have some Virgo influences that make you much, attracted to simple living, and you just didn't realize it at the time. Who knows? Advice is the Ten of Wands. Again, these are cards that I wouldn't necessarily look at as literally interpreting them, because this is about taking on the burden of somebody else. So again, I would say look at how you may do this. Taking on the responsibility of something that may not belong to you. And a perfect example of that is taking responsibility for other people's feelings. If you are afraid to confront the truth about a relationship because you're afraid of how the other person will react, then at the very least you better, if you're going to sacrifice your happiness for somebody else's happiness, then at least acknowledge that and be okay with that sacrifice. But obviously there are probably people who are not happy with this idea of that being what they have to do in life, and they feel resentful, and they feel like, oh, I have to be the one to sacrifice, huh? And it's like, no, you don't have to, but if you choose to, then you have to go 100%. If you sacrifice and then you're resentful and even maybe being passive aggressive about it, then you're hurting both you and the other person. I think it's more hurtful to live a lie than it is to be honest about a relationship with somebody. I honestly do. And I think that you're also releasing that person so that they can find somebody who genuinely wants to be with them. If this is a house situation, if this is like actually you being disenchanted with what you thought you wanted in terms of a bigger house or a more expensive house, then the Ten of Wands is saying what kind of effort, time, whatever you want to call it, but also that physical grind of working to support a house. What does that do? What kind of toll is that taking? I remember I went back to college and got a degree when I was in my 30s. Actually, I think I was in my early 40s when I actually got the degree. But, it was great to go back as an older adult because I could appreciate things more. And I remember I had this teacher, and I was majoring in English literature, couple of things. But one of the things that was really interesting was that we were reading this material from Thoreau, and I don't know why he was really into Thoreau, and he was and Thoreau was talking about and remember Thoreau was in the 1800s, so It wasn't like the kind of world that we live in today. But even then, Thoreau, who was a Cancer, I believe, and, Walden Pond and all that stuff, he was calculating how much energy it takes to, buy certain things. And, do you really want, like, how many hours of work does it take to pay for those pair of shoes or what have you? And it was really interesting because it was like, you don't think of things that way. And, some of those shoes are $500. I mean, I don't know how anybody buys a pair of $500 shoes, but, even $100, $150, how many hours do you have to work? And if you don't like where you work, how much crap do you have to tolerate to buy this material object? So that might be something for you to consider. In terms of like, what is the give and take? And so then we've got, I'm going to just put both of these cards, because these are both cards I picked first, because they're both kind of what we would consider a bit negative. I don't like to say negative because it can have some good things attached to it. And actually, I could have left it here. The possible outcome, Three of Swords. I'm always thinking of rejection with this, but it could be that you decide to just change your life and cut everything off very quickly, because that's the surgeon. It could be, heart surgery. That's what Three of Swords can be too, but it's like that idea of making a clean cut, not just kind of going back and forth. And so in a relationship, it would be like being very clear that you have moved on emotionally from this person, and therefore you have no like kind of confusion or are torn into different directions about this person, and so it's easier to say goodbye to them. But I don't know, I just didn't want to end on that note. But I also, too, with work matters, it can be the same thing. Or, if, selling a house or something and saying, you know what, I really just don't, it's not for me. I actually, just to let you know, astrologically, your fourth house, Leo, is Scorpio. And there is a full moon in Scorpio on May 7th, I believe. And so maybe you've already been thinking about this. That would be very interesting if that were true. So I picked another card, and this is a card that I wouldn't end the reading on either. It's the Five of Wands, and it can be a card of conflict. And now this is going to be not within yourself, but with other people. And so with those two cards together, let's say that you want to end a marriage even though you don't want to hurt somebody. You have to understand that just the act of doing this will likely trigger, if you're the one who's taking the initiative, it will likely trigger that person will think that they are being rejected. And that could lead to them feeling angry about it. And you have to be willing to trust that even if that occurs, that you're doing the right thing. Because you may second guess yourself and say, oh gosh, I don't want to be this type of person who hurts others. And yet, you know that you're not, you don't feel like you're meant to be with this person. And so I picked a card which I think is much more apropos. And it's the Three of Wands. And this is a card of seeking expansion. And for Leo, this can sometimes be tricky because you're a fixed sign, and so you do like consistency. You may dislike change, and so you might be more inclined to stick with what you know, even if it's something that doesn't really grab you anymore. And same thing applies to any domestic issue, like, the home itself. The Three of Wands to me is about freedom. So it can be about not having to, work overtime to pay for something that you rarely can even enjoy. So, I mean, that's the other crazy part of that. If you're working so many hours, you have even less time to enjoy this thing that you're supposedly so passionate about possessing. And also it's like traveling light, Hey, I just want to, view life as an adventure. I don't want to have to feel like I'm stuck. So that can be freeing, definitely. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a personal reading, I do astrological versions of this using your natal chart. And that can show what you came into this lifetime with in terms of talents. And, sometimes we kind of go off script or go off the course because of other people's influences. And this can show up and lead us to be doing things that we really don't want to be doing. So, my website is rainamoonastrology.com. The link is below. Take care. Bye.